Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for today's episode of Recruit Military Live, where we will be discussing methods in which employers can tap into military talent pipelines to further enhance their workforce. As always, my name is Gabby Petticrew, and I am very excited to welcome back our guest today. He serves as managing partner at Randle Partners and is an experienced talent executive, coach, and advanced Hogan Leader Assessment Certified Professional. He is a leader known for selecting, building, and reorganizing teams to reach their full business potential. He has over 20 years of Fortune 100 and Fortune 1000 global human resources and talent acquisition experience, creating and leading high-performance teams. He is also co-author of the best-selling book, The Talent War: How Special Operations and Great Organizations Win on Talent, as well as a renowned public speaker. Following a successful career as a U.S. Army officer, he transitions to the talent function, serving the last over 10 years, as a global HR executive and leader, with the teams he has built and led having hired over 80,000 professionals in over 60 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to George Randle. Welcome back, George.
Hey, it's good to see you guys again, and thank you for having me. This is great.
Of course. No, I mean, we obviously, we've had you on a few times in the past, and the value you've brought to every live session and to our audience has been remarkable. So we're so glad to have you back, and thank you for joining us. I'm very excited to get into it today because it's not all that often. You know, we absolutely love sharing information and knowledge and resources to our military community, specifically to, you know, the vets, the spouses, the active duty members, and, you know, reservists who are transitioning full time to the civilian sector. But it's not often we get to really shine a strong spotlight on the employer side, and especially maybe those employers who haven't really tapped into the military community and that pipeline of just absolute gold when it comes to a workforce. So I'm very excited to get into it today. And, you know, jumping right into it, the first important step that you mentioned is finding that executive or senior leader at that organization that possibly is a veteran. And what's funny is that sometimes individuals may think that they can spot that veteran, you know, that former service member in a crowd. But a lot of the times you may never know. I know I tell my neighbor just found out that I was a 10-year Marine veteran, and he was like, what? Yeah. You just never know. So yeah, please, you know, let's dive into that. Just that very first important step is making that connection with an executive within that organization that was a veteran, and, you know, having the conversations with them to get them to agree to even hire more veterans and the importance of that.
Well, a little bit of context. You know, as I transitioned out of the military, this was before LinkedIn. And, you know, when you were faxing resumes, and I finally got into a consulting firm, and for whatever reason, I ended up needing to move to HR. And it was so hard for me to get into a really, really good firm. And I'm thinking, wow, look, vets are loyal. They are resourceful, high integrity, high drive. They have all these immense attributes. I'm like, why aren't we hiring him? Why was it so hard for me to get in? And so I would go around with a sense of righteousness that's bigger than the building I'm in, thinking, you need to be hiring vets, recruiting. Why aren't you hiring vets? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And I'm spending all my time selling the recruiting teams. And what was missing, and really the context for all of this, was the real aha moment that I had, which is the recruiters are there to be people pleasers for the hiring managers. They're overwhelmed. They have too many positions. All they want to do is fill them, get the hiring manager happy or off their back. And it was like, well, this isn't going to go as fast and as far as I want to create a military veterans program at this firm. And it turned out to be the first one at KPMG. It went over to Deloitte, so that's their veterans program.
Yeah.
And I ran into a couple senior executives, and we were having a beer, and I just said, well, why aren't you giving a chance to veterans like a chance was given to you? That's when the light bulb went off. And I said, well, if anybody is going to campaign, instead of me being a manager or senior associate, like pushing the rock up a hill, proverbially.
Mm-hmm.
I literally went to them and said, look, what if we look through your positions and I can bring you an interviewing day, or I can bring you vets? Are you willing to hire them and put your name behind them? Because look, you're now an SVP.
Yeah.
You know what you brought to the table. Let me bring you people like you. And that to them was like, yeah, I would love to help out my fellow veterans. So it dawned on me that the very, very first thing was, if I could get an executive sponsor, the whole purpose of creating a veterans program is we all want great veterans. We want homes for them. We want to be helpful. We're altruistic. We want to do all these great things.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you can plant a seed of a veteran doing great things, you're running around like mad. And so literally what I did is said, look, I'm going to go through your requisitions, but what I want you to do is sponsor the first 3 or 4 vets that I bring in. I'll let you interview 20. And as I said, and if we ever do throw that slide up there, it's what I realized, it's not hard to find veterans.
Yeah.
It's not hard to convince veterans to come to a firm. They want a new life. They want something stable. They really, it's really easy to recruit them into your firm. But there's a downside that I didn't put on this slide, which is there's not a lot of things worse than telling a veteran, hey, look at this great company I have, and then you can't get them an interview.
Yeah.
So the executive sponsor, being a veteran, when they agree to hire them onto the team, now you have proof points. And there is nothing, and here's the thing, and you can't include all the subtext in a slide, but all of a sudden you get veterans that are kicking ass and taking names, working for somebody, improving the utilization, improving their relationships, driving efficiency, doing all kinds of things. All the other non-veteran leaders now look and go, well, I want some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as I got an executive sponsor and got their attention, I was off to the races. My first event, I hired 17 veterans from one interviewing day.
Wow.
And then it just started to multiply. But several months prior, I was spending all that time with the recruiters thinking that was the gateway into the firm.
Mm-hmm.
But when I have a senior vice president that says, hey, you know what, recruiters, I want more veterans on my team. They're people pleasers. They react to the SVP. And it took off. And it really proved the point. My only goal was to get veterans in and let them be them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Then I didn't have to sell anymore. Then it was a matter of people would come to me and say, George, how can we get more of these great people into our company?
Exactly.
And then from there, and I won't go through the whole slide, but then all the new problems came up, like how do I assimilate them? How do I get an employee resource group? How do I get sponsors and battle buddies, to remember that term?
Yeah.
Make sure they assimilate and start doing good things as fast as possible. That's how you start a veterans program really, really quickly and get the low-hanging fruit and get those things, because now recruiting will pay attention when I call them.
Absolutely. And just as a reminder, whether you're an employer who has hired veterans, who hasn't really tapped into that yet and is interested, or whether you're a veteran who has benefited from programs such as this, please feel free to chime in anytime, ask any questions, especially while we have an amazing executive and experienced individual such as George on. But no, George, it's exactly that. The fact that this is the first step is why it's so important. It's all about word of mouth. It's one thing for, as a veteran to come to an executive, an SVP and say, you should be hiring veterans and this is why. But it's one thing to really tap into and appeal to that ethos of a veteran in that position already and be like, these are the qualities you brought to this organization. Look at the level you were able to take those characteristics, apply it, and get to the level you are now. Why aren't you doing that more? Like, wouldn't you want to increase efficiency and effectiveness within the organization? Everything that comes with hiring veterans So finding that in for maybe, struggling to get that in, finding that individual, doing that research and getting in contact with them, having that conversation, like you said, even over some lunch, over beer, it could be a simple conversation to really appeal to them, have that light bulb moment. And from there on, hopefully have that snowball effect that comes with that conversation.
I know it, and it made me, I'll be honest, it made me feel stupid. Like all of those things I had been doing in the past, running around chasing my tail, I felt, who could speak for veterans better than me? And I was very good at sales. I was very good at being persuasive. And then I thought, you know what? Let's do this the simple way. Let's get the executive sponsor and say, well, who gave you your start? And guilt them into, well, why aren't you paying that forward to the brothers and sisters in arms, that took care of you?
Imagine how good that feels to do that for someone else,
Exactly.
to be that person that gives that individual a chance.
And so if I needed guilt, oh my God, I would lay that on with a shovel.
Lay it on thick like peanut butter.
But the other thing that came with that was really, really important. And I did my research, because you can't just go guilt them into it and then they'll half-hearted say, yeah, let's hire more vets. You have to do the research as well. And so what I would do is find that executive and I would go through all of their different openings. And then I would look and be very realistic. Where can I put veterans that are going to succeed? And say, one of the guys' name was Mark. And I said, hey, Mark, you have 2 senior consultant positions down here that are working on X contract for, IT. That they're working on a construction or a large project management. Look, here's 5 positions I can fill with vets within 2 weeks. Can I have those assigned to me? And will you tell your recruiter that we're going to entertain vets first? So he didn't have to do anything other than say, yes, I want more vets. And you've done the research, George. So let's put them into those spots. And they were spots where the veterans would excel immediately. And, they have to learn the corporate world. They're still
the lingo, how it works. Yeah, you're not having someone breathe over your shoulder and shout commands at you, all day.
Yeah, but there's a lot of veterans out there, and I can't count. I'm probably in the 6 figures of talking and coaching vets. But they'll all tell you, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. Yes, but what they don't know is the other side of the equation. So it was incumbent upon me to find positions for them where I knew that as soon as they walked in, their talents, their perseverance, their drive, their resiliency, problem solving, everybody would go, oh my God, thank God you're on this team. How can I get more of you?
Exactly.
And then that's where it started to roll. And from there, then once I owned openings, then look, there's some things on that slide. Look, I wanted to brand my employer. That you work with HR to do. I created separate landing pages so veterans could go look at the veterans that were in the company and thriving, because there's nothing like selling a veteran to show them an example of somebody who was once in their position who's now vice president or executive vice president. And put that story on a landing page and go, wow, they really do value vets here. Now I have people putting on their best, trying to be their best, being competitive to get into our firm. And now I own these positions. So when I go to, and everybody's been to a military career fair, yeah, we'd love to take your resume. We'd love to take you this. But now members of my employee resource group could go to Fort Bragg. They could go to Fort Hood. And I know they've been renamed and I don't keep up. But I could go and say, hey, we have these 10 positions. You look like you'd be a fit. Would you be open to considering this? And all of a sudden now, instead of saying no to vets, or I'm just going to consider your resume, I'll take it and put you in a black hole. Now we have something concrete to offer the veterans. And then the veterans are telling their friends, hey, go see George, go see that booth.
That word of mouth travels fast.
I've got the cycle going. and I can achieve results on behalf of vets. And then once vets are in the firm, they're doing the rest of the work for me reputationally.
Yep. And I think that there's so much that you've said, like one, just doing that research, not only on the organization, but the positions that they do have open, and then cross-referencing that with what specific veterans and what, specialty MOSs would be a great fit. And within, maybe if it's a specific area within the country, all of that. And then to not only come to say, I can help you with this, but come with the answers, come with like, hey, these individuals would be a perfect fit, and here is why. And then on the other side of that, for veterans coming to a career fair specifically for the military community, they're so used to going to job fairs. And I think it's one of the most like general complaints of job fairs is, a veteran will spend time even getting into great civilian attire, perfecting that resume, printing it out, practicing that elevator speech, getting to that job fair, whether it's on or off base. And then they're told, by that recruiter, go online and look at the positions we have. So on your side, having the position saying, oh, this is what this organization has, and this is why, if you fall into this category, this is why you would be a great fit. And, we'll definitely, have a further conversation, further interview, sometimes even hiring on the spot, which is absolutely insanely incredible. But there's so much importance to what you just said, doing your research on the organization, the positions they have available, that would be extremely beneficial to hire a veteran in. And then on the flip side, bringing those positions and speaking to those veterans about it, having that battle plan, bringing all of that forward, doing that work will pay off in the end for everyone involved.
It did two things. And let's start from the military perspective. For anybody in the audience that's listening, how did it go the last time you put a problem on your boss's desk? Rarely goes well. Rarely goes well.
They don't want to hear it.
And so what I switched that dynamic, and it took me a few knocks upside the head of like, this isn't working, is to go to that executive sponsor and say, hey, look, you need dedicated, driven people who are going to stick. And now this is a little bit generational, but I would share with them, I'm like, you're getting much more mature people than you can hire out of these best schools. You want people who are driven and who will work and deliver results.
Absolutely.
This demographic is going to do more for you. All I need you to do is give me carte blanche with your recruiters. Now, when I went to the recruiters who are people pleasers, I've solved their problem by saying, I can fill these 5 recs instead of 90 days. I can get it done in 3 weeks. And your boss is going to be really, really happy. And oh, by the way, at the end, once I got all of these veterans, within 6 months, I went back, because this is a little tiny secret in the industry. Most HR people will consider, they measure the attrition rate, but they also measure the first year attrition rate. How many people come in, don't assimilate, don't do well? How many are what they would consider bad hires or mishires?
Sure, yeah.
And the veteran population blew those numbers out of the water for stickability. So now I had another selling point because of what the veterans were doing. I just gave them the opportunity, and now they're off rocking and rolling, and it was great. And then, I do want to say one thing. One of the challenges is we are in the digital age. And so when veterans don't get to hand their resume to somebody, I know that seems offensive. But what I would do to circumvent that, so instead of just telling them to go online, I would hand them a card with the website and with the job spec on the card and say, apply to this website and this specific job. And then that recruiter knew where I was and was watching for those resumes to come in and would give them special attention.
Fantastic. Yeah. And even that provides more reassurance to the veterans, to that service member, because it's one thing to be like, go apply on our website, with no real direction. Yeah. Whereas you're actually having a conversation, being handed something concrete with the actual link provided to maybe even a specific, job listing. they're going to walk away from that conversation definitely a lot more reassured than be like, yeah, great meeting you, go apply on our website, with no direction. So that even that small gesture can make a huge difference.
And then it became even easier because even at the lower levels, now I know the economy's been under inflation and hiring's been a little bit challenging, but companies still incentivize employee referrals. So once I get veterans in, I would tell the veterans, look, you want to earn an extra 250, 500, maybe $1,000. Once you're in 60 and 90 days, hey, here's the employee referral. Give this card to another veteran that you know and trust, and you can earn some extra money and bolster our veterans program. And so the idea was, how do I get this self-propelled? And it, outside of the first knocks, once I got the executive sponsor, once I got ownership of the open requisitions and put these people in it. Now, on the flip side, one of the things that you have to do if you're creating a veterans program, when you do go to those career fairs, is you have to let the veterans know, listen, when you get into a company, your ideal job, your first job is not your ideal job.
Not gonna be perfect.
Away. But if you're in the company, now you see all that can be done. Prove yourself the first year, and then that company is your oyster.
Yep, that opportunity for growth just opens itself up. Absolutely.
It does. Absolutely. So it was fun. We created the first junior military officer program. And then because that was so successful, we had to go with that because that was the low-hanging fruit. They wanted degrees and stuff. But now, because so many enlisted have degrees, we could expand very easily into that. We created boot camps where we would bring in 10 to 15, train them for 3 to 4 weeks, and then boom, they got farmed out. And it was a wild success.
That's absolutely incredible. And there's one thing that, I'm sure it's been out there. Maybe I just haven't encountered it myself and heard of it, but hosting an interview day for vets only. I think just that idea would be extremely successful, I think, because you're gathering the best of the best all for that one day. How has that interview process, or putting a program like that together where it's a vets only interview day, how successful has that been? Like, what has been the feedback for something like that? That's just such a simple idea, but can be so effective.
Well, it was funny. It was a twist on something I had come up with because I was leading talent acquisition for a large group. And part of the cycle and part of the difficulty of being a recruiter, and I won't go into the difficulties, but they're really working as fast as they can. It's like being in the military. You never have enough headcount to do what you want to do. So they're working really, really quickly. And so what I told my folks to do was take your hiring managers and say, every Thursday and Friday, these 3 hours belong. If you have openings, you can come to this event. So we were taking civilians and doing an interview day. And that's all the manager did that day. And I thought, well, why the heck aren't we doing that for veterans? And in some companies back in the day, I was able to fly in 15 to 20. And then other days we did full Zoom days where I had multiple hiring managers in multiple rooms. We would matrix them out, who should go where. And literally a hiring manager could spend 3 hours, find 10 vets, make a decision on 3 to 4. And by the following Monday, we were ready to put out offers. It just became a matter of efficiency rather than doing, let's put one vet against one requisition and let's see how that interview process turns out. No, guess what? The executive sponsor says, hey, I got 15 open positions here. Here's a Veterans Day. Here are the 2 managers that are going to go and interview. And then they're going to recommend where these people go that pass the interview into the departments or the segments of our team. And it just crammed it all into one compact environment. So it became very, very efficient for both the veteran, the hiring manager, and the executive sponsor. And it was just, I don't know. When I look back on it now, it looks like a genius idea, but it was just so incredibly simple and effective.
Exactly. And that's like, thank you for agreeing, Walter, interview days for vets. And that when, we had spoke about, all the different topics you wanted to speak today. And I had, seen that you're mentioning an interview day just for vets, the opportunities that creates, because I think one of the most difficult obstacles in just the whole hiring process for veterans, not only making that transition, but is being given the chance, right? You hear it countless times every single day is, I've applied to 100 different positions and haven't even gotten a call back, haven't even gotten, even a rejection email or, thanks for applying, but we're moving forward with someone else. So having that day where those veterans are being brought, and whether it's over Zoom, whether it's in person, regardless, and just having the opportunity to present themselves, to sit in front of that hiring manager and have that interview, to sell themselves, and just apply everything that they've been practicing, to finally have that opportunity is huge. And it's just like what you said, it's such a simple idea, a simple program, but it's saturated with all that talent in those few confined hours. And I don't think really employers and hiring managers really understand the value that brings to the veterans and how appreciative they are just for that opportunity. And like you said, you're cutting out all the process that could come before that, with, like sending in resumes and having conversations back to back and follow-ups. Whereas we're sending you into the interview now, do a great job, and we'll hear, as soon as it's done. So I think the efficiency of that is absolutely incredible.
There's one more little manipulative side of me. Because first of all, if I'm going to create a veterans program, it's my name on the line. So I want to be successful. The one great thing that people probably don't pick up as a military veterans only day, and all these hiring managers are interviewing veterans, guess who the managers are not interviewing? The civilian counterparts.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
They're only getting to see vets and compare vets against vets. So the only thing they can hire is a veteran.
Is a veteran. Genius. And I think
I have taken all of those people out that, they've got the MBA here, they've been to this school, they've been with this company. I've taken all of that competition out of the way and allowed a hiring manager to focus on the attributes, the characteristics, and all the amazing value that a veteran brings to the table. And I have them singularly focused on that. Now, the other thing is, I could tell a lot of stories. I want to be very careful I don't go down the rabbit hole. But an average recruiter has 15 to 20 open positions. And so when you apply, it's time stamped, regardless of AI, regardless of everything else. And so what a recruiter's trying to do is get 5, not the best candidates, 5 well-qualified candidates that the hiring manager is going to like. Well, why not narrow the focus of that hiring manager into just veterans? Hey, here's a 3-hour block and you can get all of your positions filled with great people. That hiring manager, it's the best use of their time. They know, okay, I'm taking these 3 days out. And even further, after I got them used to doing that and they liked what they got and the veterans performed as they always do, I'd say, hey, you know what, Greg, Jill, you know what, I'll fund it, but I'm going down to Fort Bragg.
Exactly.
You want to come? You want to come with? You want to see a military base? We'll get you on a military base and do a career fair. Excuse me. They loved it, and they would get out, and all of a sudden they're surrounded by all these vets. So now they kind of get addicted to the great side of veterans, and that was the idea, was to create something that would create its own momentum. And bring more vets in. And the more vets that you get in, the more of a block they become, the employee resource group, they become battle buddies. Now you're off and running and you're not having to make the case, a veteran is more loyal, a veteran's this. You're not selling, you're showing them and letting them see it for themselves. And so the only real challenging part to that equation is if you do a veterans hiring day, as a veteran myself and as a talent acquisition specialist, you do have to put a couple days of prep work into those veterans to make sure that they know how to interview very, very
Absolutely.
well. Review their resumes, make sure they're not the garbage that comes out of TAP and ACAP. You
They
have
don't always have the most up-to-date resources.
Well, I'll just put it this way. The people that help them create resumes have never been in my position on the corporate side and seen.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's not that they're bad people. They're well-intentioned. They just don't know what shows well and what is required on our side of the fence.
Yeah.
But I would prep, and I would tell you I never had anything less than a 90% hit ratio on the veterans that came to interview. It was amazing.
Absolutely. And I mean, with all the research that you do, both on, the organization and employer side and also on the veteran side, I can only imagine, especially within an employer and hiring managers who are not familiar with veterans, who are not, used to hiring and having these ongoing conversations with veterans, how they feel maybe for the first time having that, hiring event only for veterans or interview day only for vets. After that block is done, just how amazed they feel after those conversations and how efficient that is, and just how no BS, straight to the point, direct, here's what I bring to the table, that those veterans are. But it is just like you said, while veterans are amazing, there is a whole different, whether it's corporate language, whether it's adjusting to the way that civilian sectors are used to working day to day as opposed to the military life. I've had conversations and have had to prep some individuals that I personally know just for our job fairs because they were so nervous. They even got out, ran their own business where it was them, and they, didn't have to answer to anyone. But now in the position of having to go work for another employer, they're shaking in their boots. And I'm just like, you got this. You've been doing this. Now it's just having those conversations. So no, you're exactly right. Just ensuring, even just providing that reassurance and helping prep those veterans, again, can make a huge difference.
Yeah. So about 3 or 4 days in advance, maybe a week in advance of the event, I would host 2 or 3 interviewing seminars about how to interview. I would tell them, start growing out your hair a little bit. I would even tell them where to shop for suits, what the proper attire was, and we would start practicing. I wanted to show them and have them show themselves at their best. And the challenge is that veterans just don't know that. They've never been exposed to it. So it's a skill you have to teach.
Absolutely. And I think, Walter, thank you again for chiming in. He said, just all of these actions makes vets feel valued and not overlooked. And that, again, can be a huge difference in that boost of confidence and saying, I do bring value to the civilian workforce. I'm not just, overcoming the prejudice that some individuals may have, just outdated views on the military community. We are talented professionals, and just making that transition to the civilian sector is the only hump that we have to get over. So thank you for that as well, Walter. And, I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but is there anything outside of, I did want to touch on your book and that amazing resource, but is there anything else that, that we missed that you want to cover when it comes to employers tapping into that pipeline, that gold mine of the military community?
Well, I would tell you, and this comes as really a critical learning lesson, is a mistake. I am as altruistic as they come, and I wanted to help every veteran coming down the pike. And if you create a veterans program, what you have to realize very quickly, you can't do that. You really do have to screen the veterans to make sure that they're going to be great representatives. In particular, the one that was the hardest for me is, somebody's been on multiple deployments. They're all over the world, and you have this opportunity, but let's say that's in Texas, and your family's from Tennessee, and they want to go and take their wife and their kids, or their husband and their kids, and move to Tennessee. And I would share with them, listen, this is an opportunity to join corporate America. You're young. This is where you start your roots. If you're not willing to consider opportunity over location, you need to very quickly cut your losses and move to those vets who really want a career in corporate America.
Absolutely.
I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to explain to them why it's better to, look, when you start out, it's absolutely who you are and what you can deliver. When you move to a certain spot, it's what you know. And then eventually it's who knows you,
Yep.
and you have to drive your career. But I did have too many veterans that, due to deployments and all the right reasons, want to be closer to family. But I'm like, that's not how corporate works.
Yeah, you really have to keep that flexibility and adaptability characteristic within you. And when an opportunity presents itself, you never know when you're going to get an opportunity like that again. So, really consider that, be open-minded, and think about what that opportunity will bring to you, all the amazing benefits that may come with that.
Yeah, so for me, I wanted to make sure that I was always screening and preparing and presenting the best veterans, that they were realistic about their opportunities, and, that I could place them and they were going to do a real good job. Because at the end of the day, if they were there 6 months and weren't doing well, it was always a reflection on me. So I still wanted to be that great recruiter and career advisor and represent our company well and bring in the best and most qualified vets that I could. But you can't be selling veterans like this is a great company, like a lot of these recruiting firms will do. You sell them on the opportunity.
Exactly.
And so that's what I think. When I kicked it off at HP at the end of the first year, I don't know, we had done 13,000 in a year that we hired on. So yeah, it's been very, very rewarding, but you have to put the work in and you have to segregate things so veterans can succeed.
Absolutely.
Trying to persuade an HR and recruiting team that veterans are great, you're going to be right all day long, but they're still going to be pleasing their hiring managers. So get that executive sponsor, get those requisitions within your control that you can present vets, do interview days, go to the bases. Getting veterans, finding them, recruiting them, selling them, not the hard part. It's selling the company, and that's where your research and effort has to be poured into.
And even those steps, getting within the organization, starts with a conversation. Like you mentioned, these, the first beginning steps don't have to be all that complicated either.
No.
And so, and I did, want to remind our audience that you are a best-selling author. And if they would like to dip more into this information and, more in depth and in detail, where can they get a hold of that?
Well, they can get that on Amazon, and I think it's a good read. It was focused towards employers, and the gist of the book was that the only true competitive advantage you can hope to achieve and maintain as a company is your people.
Exactly.
And so what I share with people, and this is what I would share with all of those people that are going to be training and preparing vets. I do executive search now. So if I'm looking for a COO, the resumes that I bring are all going to be 5 degrees off center. And so there's not a lot of difference between the candidates.
Yeah.
It's the attributes, it's the characteristics. And veterans need to know those attributes and characteristics, not skills, but what makes them different, and be able to articulate that. And a lot of those, the top 9 are in the book about what you need to be demonstrating through words, articulating to that firm to say, listen, when I bring it, I'm going to bring it big time. And this is what you can count on getting, because the U.S. military is the world's greatest leadership incubator. And this is kind of a blueprint as to how to demonstrate those skills to employers.
Absolutely. And as it's illustrated on the cover of that book, it is because the military community is the tip of the spear. You cannot get sharper than that. So thank you so much for providing this resource, all the work that went into that as well, and for providing that to the military community and the employers as well. Any last saved rounds from you, George? Anything else you want to get out there to the employers or reassurance to that military community?
Never give up. Never, ever, ever give up.
Never say never.
Because veterans do more for companies, and I don't like to slight the younger generation, because we've all in the military worked with the younger generation and seen untold stories of bravery and sacrifice.
Absolutely.
We've all seen that. And so I don't want to knock, but what has come in the door to a lot of the organizations that I've been head of recruiting for, wow, is it a hybrid work week? Can I work from Starbucks 3 days a week?
Oh,
Can
no.
the sense of entitlement would blow your mind. Thank God my kids bypassed that, and
You taught them well.
But veterans don't bring that. They don't bring that sense of entitlement. And so if you can continue to drive that forward with your hiring managers and executive sponsors, listen, you're getting a different cut of a human being here, and they are going to help you achieve your KPIs and your objectives. They're going to make you look better. They're going to help you get promoted, and they're going to strengthen the leadership fabric of this company because of who they are and all of the training and ethos that they have picked up through many years in the military.
Absolutely. And, if anything, the biggest thing I took away from this is, if you're in that employer, if you're in that hiring manager position, be that individual that pays it forward and gives that veteran a chance, because the difference you're making in that veteran's world is astronomical. So thank you again, George, for coming on. We appreciate it. This is not the first, and it will not be the last time we have you on. Thank you so much for all the advice and experience that you brought to today's session.
Thank you so much for having me, and good luck to all those people hiring more veterans. Godspeed to you. I loved it. Best part of my life.
Already got someone who's getting their hands on that that gold there, George. So thank you again. And thank you to everyone that joined us for today's Recruit Military Live. Have a great one, and we will see you next time.
Thanks all.